Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draft Outlook. I'm your host, Joseph Potter. Today, we're going over our mock draft show as well as doing previews for tonight's Thursday night game. But first, we're going to start off with quick hits. Joining me today is Mr. Chris Ransom of Draft Utopia, who will also be going over the first round of his mock draft.
Yep, I
And
haven't even promoted it yet. I've been so busy with work, I haven't even promoted it yet. I've just been double checking it, and yeah, we'll have that pick by pick in depth updated in a second. I'm trying to load your page so I can tweet it out, but nothing's loaded on my phone. I could try my computer though.
it's just about as good as my internet connection's been today. So,
We got some quick hits we need to tackle as well.
Oh, yes, and tackle them we will. It would be better than the 49ers defense at tackling this stuff.
Yeah.
Or
the Giants coverage, which was just abysmal.
Yeah, well, I don't think the Giants defense right now could cover their. Okay, we're not going to go there.
Just Norris Jenkins missing assignments. Last week you saw Eli Apple and Cromartie miss assignments. You saw Landon Collins miss assignments. The other safety they got out of Boise State looks like a total bust. I mean, this second they might have to replace everyone on that secondary in 2019 if they keep playing this bad.
Yeah, I think they end up replacing everybody, to be honest. It's like I don't think the Mars are gonna put up with this crap. I mean, it's just not in their nature.
I mean, they'd replace these guys now, but they just have too many holes on the offense with Marshall, with the left tackle play, with Eli Manning. You have a golden opportunity to get Eli's successor. There's just too many offensive things and outside linebackers that outweigh revamping the secondary this year. So they're sort of stuck with this overpaid secondary for another year. But if it doesn't improve, then they're probably going to make replacements in 2019. It's just they got a lot of crap on their plate they need to clean up.
Yeah, and it's a little messier than your dog going on the floor.
Yep.
Yeah, that gets you a little bit of a sigh. But all right, let's get things headed off here.
I tweeted the show and
let's give them some quick hits.
Takes.
Yeah, Chris. First question: Jason Peters never plays another NFL game after blowing out his knee for the Eagles.
I'm going to say he comes back in 2018 and leads the Eagles to Super Bowl 53 in Atlanta, where they face the Pittsburgh Steelers. Maybe they even win the game, because I have the Eagles picking at 32 in my 2019 mock draft that I launched last week. So I'm going to say he comes back and he stays completely healthy and helps the Eagles win a championship, just for the heck of it.
I had a bold prediction to that one. All right. Atlanta turns around their offense this week. As we know, Atlanta's offense has been less than stellar this season after a breakout year last year. They turn it around this week.
Yeah, I'm going to say I haven't gotten my pickup for this game yet, but I'm going to say the Falcons blow out Seattle for some reason because Richard Sherman's injury. I think they have a field day with the corners now. Earl Thomas is still dealing with injuries. So I'm going to say the Falcons win this 34-20. They drop 34 on Seattle in Seattle.
It leads to the next one. The Legion of Boom's core, the Legion of Boom has run its course.
I don't think that's the case at all. They've got all of these guys locked up long-term, and they're going to keep them around. I mean, after Russell Wilson, the foundation of Seattle is the Legion of Boom. Those are the two things that anchor this Seattle franchise. I mean, there were rumors and speculation at the beginning of the season that they'd break up the Legion of Boom from Tony Mario because they had younger guys like Griffin, like Delano Hill that they got in the draft, but I don't think they break up the Legion of Boom. Even though these rookies are showing promise and doing a lot of good things, I don't think they break up the Legion of Boom. Could we see a youth movement at some point down the road? Perhaps. But right now, I don't think we see a breakup in the Legion of Boom.
Uh, Nathan Peterman gets his first start at quarterback and leads the Bills to a win.
No. Nate Peterman throws 2 interceptions, has a miserable outing, gets pressured by this Charger defense that unleashes freshman hazing on Nate Peterman in his first career NFL start. Joey Bosa, freshman hazing.
True or false? The Deshaun Gibson comments combined with the Deshaun Kaiser coming off his best game of the year and Corey Coleman returning at receiver for the Browns propel the Browns to their first win this week.
No, the Browns go 0-10. I have an everything wrong with Week 11 bit I did on Draft Utopia, where I basically narrated Week 11 in the NFL like CinemaSins does. And I mentioned how the Browns would go 0-10 and how you would narrate it from Jacksonville on the Evolution Network in that bit. And I mentioned a bunch of other things like Atlanta getting revenge on Seattle because they lost to Seattle in the Richard Sherman, that controversial ending last year. Atlanta gets revenge for that. So, yes, the Browns lose. But maybe Kaiser recovers a fumble that Tashawn Gibson drops after an interception and redeems himself. Maybe that happens.
And the final quick hit, the Giants had a brutally honest team meeting this week. Does it turn things around?
No. Now, in 2 for the money, the Giants play the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and they win the Super Bowl, but Matthew McConaughey flips a coin to determine who win. I basically flipped a coin to determine who'd win the Chiefs-Giants game, and it came up heads both times. So that means the Chiefs are going to win because I said heads, Chiefs would win, tails, Giants would win, and I flipped the coin twice, and it was heads both times. So that means the Chiefs will win. Whether it means they win by double digits or not remains to be seen. But the Chiefs will win because the coin told me they would win. That's what Matthew McConaughey did in 2 for the Money. Have you never seen that movie? There's Al Pacino plays Walter Abrams.
No.
It's basically like the Walter Jerapinski movie, and Jeremy Piven is Matt McGuire. And they're these gamblers, they're these stockbrokers that try to make money off of people.
Okay, now in case you people aren't following here, and a lot of people don't know, WalterFootball.com's been around for a while. Walter Cherapinski is the owner. I was one of the original forum members that stuck with it. That I think I was member 53. We had this draft guy, Matt McGuire, who ended up going into teaching. And he was pretty popular in some circles. So basically, what Chris is talking about.
Well, this movie, Matthew McConaughey,
that is around
Matthew
a decade
McConaughey,
into
former
the
Arizona
past.
State quarterback who becomes the star of the online casino enterprise that Walter Abrams, Al Pacino runs, and Matthew McConaughey. If this movie was based off of Walter football, Matthew McConaughey would be Charlie Campbell, Jeremy Piven would be Matt McGuire, and Al Pacino would be Walter Cherapinski. Basically, that's what this movie is, and it's a gambling movie.
Well, it would also have to take place about 10 years ago because that's when
it came out in 2005.
really had a good group there.
It came out in 2005, Joey.
Yeah, so, you know.
It's 10 years old. The movie's 12 years old, actually, because it came out in 2005. But it was a good movie, and I flipped a coin to determine who'd win the Chiefs-Giants game. As trivial as that sounds, unlike the movie where the Giants won, I flipped a coin and the Chiefs won. So
just remember, people, for the Super Bowl, Chris is going to be using the Magic 8 Ball live on the air.
I'm not going to use a Magic 8 Ball to predict the Super Bowl just because I predicted the Super Bowl right the last 2 years, last 3 years maybe. Yeah, see, I had the Patriots over Seattle, Denver over Carolina, and New England over Atlanta. So, 3 years in a row.
Well, folks, Miss Cleo is no longer there to give him advice, so it's going to be the Magic 8 Ball now. He just keeps going from one supernatural object to the next. So we're going to move on with this, and we're going to move on to something even more outrageous than we're talking about now. And that is our mock drafts because this stuff's going to be outrageous at some point, and there are going to be mistakes, there are going to be laughs, and there are going to be people upset. Everything's going to be that way until, at the very least, they get the official draft orders out.
Yeah,
So,
the draft order is going to be set. This is the last week I'm using my projections because this is the last week where we have bye weeks. I will once that ends, we will go by the official standings. And there was one player that was so impressive, we had to replace him with Byron Cowart, who got dismissed from Auburn in our draft game. And that player is in the first round of our mock. I'm pretty sure you haven't even watched their tape yet, but we'll get started.
all right. Now, I'm going to go number one. I forgot to update this pick, but it's still early in the mock draft process. My number one overall pick was San Francisco's Josh Rosen, quarterback, UCLA. Obviously, the 49ers got Jimmy Garoppolo. So I doubt this is going to happen.
Theoretically take Josh Rosen, Joey. The only quarterbacks the Niners have scouted were Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, and Josh Allen. Those are the only quarterbacks they showed any interest in because they thought those quarterbacks would fit Kyle Shanahan's West Coast offense the best. And coincidentally, those are the only three quarterbacks the Giants are scouting as well.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to do a double take here because I've got my mock draft up and ready to go. And
I think
I'm the host, I can do this.
I think they could pull a Chicago, like where, you know how Chicago got Glennon and drafted Trubisky. I could see the 49ers doing that with Garoppolo and still taking Josh Rosen, as crazy as it sounds.
Here's the thing, Chris. I'm the host, so I can do this. So since I was neglectful the first time through, I updated everything except for the first overall pick, knowing me. I'm going to update for live on the air. I'm going San Francisco, Mike McGlinchey, offensive tackle, Notre Dame.
Really? I mean, San Francisco has Joe Staley and Trent Brown, who are both healthy again.
Well, here's the thing. I have heard over the last 2 years, San Francisco's happy with Joe Staley. San Francisco's going to trade Joe Staley. San Francisco's happy with Joe Staley again. San Francisco's going to release Joe Staley. San Francisco loves Joe Staley. So we're just going to say, for argument's sake, San Francisco gets the number one pick. They go Mike McGlinchey and end the speculation on Joe Staley.
Well, they got him under contract until 2020, and he's their version of Joe Thomas. So I don't think they will he doesn't have the impact Thomas has, but he's their guy, and I don't think they're going to move on from him anytime soon.
Maybe not, but
I gave the Browns Baker Mayfield at number one, just for the record, because I figured that the Browns probably have the best chance of going 0-16 of any team in the NFL.
Well, yeah, because they're the only team this year that still doesn't have a win, so they would be the best team to go 0-16, man. They would have the best chances.
I also have at number two, I have the Niners taking Barkley, because at number two, if the 49ers, what the Niners do at number two depends entirely on what happens with Garoppolo, because they could extend him and still take Rosen to develop. They could still get Barkley, or they could get Bradley Chubb. I don't think they're going to go with any. I think those are the only three players they're considering: the quarterbacks, Barkley, and Chubb. I don't think with Trent Brown finally playing well at playing well at right tackle across from Joe Staley, I don't think they go that route. I mean, Brown's under contract until 2019, and Joe Staley's under contract until 2020. So from a business standpoint, I don't see them taking an offensive tackle at number one unless they release one of the two offensive tackles. And McGlinchey's play against Miami last weekend wasn't exactly the greatest. So I don't think they would take McGlinchey in that scenario, even though I respect your opinion.
Well, it's very possible. And for me at number two, I give the Giants Josh Rosen because I don't know anything about what Webb's doing. I don't think you know about what Webb's doing. I know Eli Manning's not playing well. I know nobody on the Giants is playing well. I know the coach is not coaching well. So
Yeah,
at this point,
NFL Big Brother, which is a show about like NFL Big Brother is basically Emmett on the brink. The Giants are so dysfunctional that we had the Geico Gecko and Affleck Duck box each other for the right to replace Ben McAdoo, and the Affleck Duck won. So that just shows you how dysfunctional the Giants are. We also had Eli Manning being like Walter White on Breaking Bad with the whole meth lab thing. So it's like the Giants are in total disarray as a franchise right now. They should give Eli more time and get McGlinchey and try to remake this thing a playoff team, but they're going to if they fire McAdoo, which I'm sure they will, they're probably going to get Josh Rosen.
And here's the thing. I have compared Josh Rosen to Phillip Rivers. The irony is that if people remember back when he was drafted, the Giants originally drafted Phillip Rivers. So there's your irony for you.
And Mark compared Rosen to Eli Manning, the quarterback the Giants actually drafted.
Oh, the Chargers drafted Eli Manning.
Well, but they traded him to the Giants, so.
They traded him, but they did actually draft him.
Yeah, the Chargers did draft him, and then they traded him, so.
Yeah. Now, this is the thing. Number 3, I've got Cleveland. Let's face it, there's a good chance San Francisco, the New York Giants, and the Cleveland Browns all end up with 1 win. So I don't know how the tiebreaker would come out with that, but we'll go with it. And Cleveland has the number 3 pick. I give him Saquon Barkley, running back, Penn State. Even though Isaiah Crowell is coming off his best game of the year, and he is like 3rd or 4th all-time on the Browns touchdown list for a running back now. I'm not sure how that happened, but it got pretty good fanfare on the Cleveland Browns website. I still say that they may end up going with Saquon Barkley. So if he's there,
yeah, I mean,
Cleveland goes with Saquon Barkley.
So far, our top 3 is exactly the same. I have the 0-16 Browns with Baker Mayfield. I have the 2-14 49ers with Saquon Barkley, and the 2-14 New York Giants with Mike McGlinchey, even though they could get Rosen. I'm waiting to see when they fire McAdoo before giving the Giants a quarterback. I'm playing the waiting game, and I'm waiting to see if Darnold declares or not, because if Darnold declares, the Giants could take Darnold at 3. Would be a huge mistake, but it could happen. I'm just saying it could happen.
It could.
That's why I'm waiting to see. I'm basically going to mock a left tackle to the Giants until the logistics for that number 3 pick unfold with the coaching, with the quarterbacks declaring, because there's a lot of uncertainty right now.
Oh, yeah.
At number 4, I have the 4-12 Chicago Bears taking Arden Key to pair with Leonard Floyd because that gives them a pass rush. This offense is stuck where they are. I wish we could give them an offensive player, but they can't buy out of Leno's contract at left tackle until at least 2019. And Mitchell Trubisky, they can't buy out of his rookie deal at all without losing cap money. So the Bears are stuck with Mitchell Trubisky until 2021, even if he's the next Ryan Leaf. So without the attitude problems off the field. So, yep, that's like a death sentence. And Arden Key, well, it's not really a death sentence. It's more like being stuck with the current president because you have Trubisky under contract for 4 years. You have our president under contract for 4 years. Except the president has a shot of getting impeached. You're stuck with Trubisky for the next 4 years.
Yeah, and I went the same way with Chicago with Arden Key. As you said, right now the Bears are stuck offensively, and they desperately need a pass rush at this point.
There's no receivers worth taking at number 4. So you have to get Key and get a receiver in the 2nd round. I mean, that's really your only play right now since you don't have that 3rd round pick. And if you want multiple receivers, you're probably going to have to trade that 2nd round pick and try to pick up multiple seconds. Maybe a team like Cleveland wants a certain receiver, and they're willing to deal some picks.
Yeah, and you know Cleveland is always in the mood to deal. So that's something to look at later on down the
There's a
road.
lot of 5 and
And
11 teams tied in terms of tiebreakers for the mock draft because I have every team in the number 5 through 9 range picking at 5 and 11. Do you want me to break down these teams by tiebreaker, which teams have the weakest strength of schedule and win the tiebreakers? If we saw 5 and 9 teams, 5 and 11 teams, you want me to break down the tiebreakers really quickly before we get to the next section of picks? Okay, the Colts have the weakest strength of schedule, so if they went 5 and 11, they would get the number 5 pick. Then it would be the Chargers, who would have the next weakest strength of schedule. Then it would be Arizona. The Jets would pick at number 8 if they finished the year 5 and 11 and beat the Chargers on Christmas Eve. And then the number 9 team would be the Browns from the Texans. The Texans have the strongest strength of schedule of 5 and 11 teams. So this is just based off of projections and pure speculation, though. So, yeah, I don't know who else you had at number 5. I gave the Colts Quentin Nelson. Costanzo is not allowed a sack in his last 2 games. They gave him a huge contract. He could get cut, but I think right now Quentin Nelson's played better than McGlinchey. Plus, Jack Mewhort, the Colts starting left guard, is going to be a free agent after the year, so you don't have to spend any money on a left guard. You could just take Nelson here, and you can use free agency to upgrade certain parts of the defense because there's inside linebackers and outside linebackers that you can get that are upgrades over what you have. So you can take care of that in free agency and finally get some stability. And you put Nelson next to Costanzo and Ryan Kelly at center. This offensive line is just going to be a lot more. There's going to be a lot more stability there. So there's a lot of good things to like, and that'll give Luck more time in the pocket if you remain patient with him, assuming he plays again.
yeah, for my number 5 pick, I have the New York Jets, and I had them taking Lamar Jackson, quarterback out of Louisville. Yeah,
That's a good pick. And speaking of Lamar Jackson, he's the next player in my mock draft to the Los Angeles Chargers at number 6. I was debating whether to go with Derwin James or Lamar Jackson in this situation, but Derwin James and Ronnie Harrison have both disappointed me in terms of consistent coverage on tape. Now, I see upside with James and Harrison, huge upside, but I also see guys who can be a little bit suspect at times in coverage. So I thought these guys were money in coverage heading into this year, but for some reason they've regressed. Lamar Jackson, though, has been consistent, and making him the successor to Rivers is the smartest thing the Chargers can do. And if they feel like that he's their guy, he's their guy. I mean, they've been to 3 – their scouts have been to 3 of Louisville's games this year. And if you don't believe me, just check out what Eric Galko of Optimum Scouting said. He said that they were at the Louisville NC State game. So that means there's either some significant interest in Jackson or some significant interest in Chubb. Maybe both. But I'm leaning towards them having significant interest in Lamar, with Rivers being up there at 36 years old and having a contract that runs out in 2020. He said he's not ready to retire yet, so that could be a smokescreen, or maybe Rivers is just he's capable of playing into his 40s like Brady. We'll see.
it is possible. At number 6, I gave the Indianapolis Colts Quentin Nelson, potentially the best offensive lineman in this draft. The only thing holding him back from being a top 5 pick, he's a guard. And
I have
value
going the
just
Colts
isn't
at
there.
number 5. It's an excellent selection. I have the Colts taking him at number 5. So the only reason you have him at 6 is because our draft order is different. I gave the Cardinals Josh Rosen at number 7 here because, yeah, I know, Josh Rosen falling to number 7. He has 9 interceptions on the year. He's been more reckless as far as turnovers have gone. I still think he's a top 10 talent, but there's people who are questioning his work ethic and his passion for the game. And if he struggles against USC on Saturday and Darnold rebounds after a strong game against Colorado, I think Darnold is back in the top 10 conversation if he declares. I don't think he's a top 5 pick like Lamar or Baker, but I think he's back in that top 10 if he can beat UCLA, because he carved Isaiah Oliver on Saturday. Darnold did. So I'm trying to downplay what he does as much as possible because I want him to go back to school. But if he has another strong game, he's back in the top 10. Not in the top 5 necessarily, but I'd say he's in the top 10 if he has a strong game against Rosen. And that would affect Rosen's stock. It would also affect Mason Rudolph's stock since he is at over 3,500 passing yards now. So it would be Baker and Lamar, and then you'd have this race between Darnold, Rosen, and Mason Rudolph, like this rat race to see who the third QB drafted is. And I still think Mason, or we'll see what happens with this draft, but I want Rosen at number 7.
Well, at number 7, I gave the LA Chargers Ronnie Harrison, safety from Alabama. Harrison's had some questions about his ability to cover, but he's had a couple games where he's covered pretty well, and
Yeah, I
he's
feel like
covered a lot of ground on the field.
A
So.
hard hitter like Cam Chancellor, but a natural in zone coverage like Ed Reed, if he can execute a little bit quicker, move his feet a little bit quicker. And whereas with Ronnie Harrison, I see flashes of Polamalu, but I don't see that same smart, instinctive, elite cover player that Polamalu was. I don't see that part of Polamalu and Ronnie Harrison.
Polamalu
was part of Polamalu and Ronnie Harrison. I don't see the instinctive coverage part of Polamalu and Ronnie Harrison. I see the blitzing that Polamalu has with Ronnie, but I don't see the coverage, and that's the mark.
Here's the thing: Polamalu was not the cover man that you're making him out to be. He was far from it. He only had like 3 years where he did anything in coverage. He was nothing. Before that, he was nothing more than a guy who sat up at the line of scrimmage and hit people. So, I mean, he was not an elite cover safety for the majority of his career by any long stretch of the imagination. So, I mean, that is something that took a long time for him to learn. And by the time he learned it, he was pretty much on the last couple years of his career. So, I mean, as far as elite coverage goes, Polamalu was not it. But moving on to number 8, Miami. I gave them Connor Williams because I know he's injured. I know he's probably going to go back, but I have not heard that he has officially declared that he's going back yet. So we're going to leave him in for the time being and see what he declares by next time. But he could end up being the top offensive tackle by the time this is all said and done. If he goes into the draft.
The scary thing is with Connor Williams, even though he doesn't have the ability to maintain blocks like some of the other offensive tackles, he has the best foot speed when healthy. So if that's why scouts love him, then he could get pushed up because there's a lot of people. Dan Brugler of CBS, Kyle Krabs of NTD Scouting. There's a lot of people who believe he's the best offensive tackle in the class, so much so to the point where he might actually jump everyone else. Even Drake Holiday, the Ravens fan that thinks Lamar's the best QB in the draft, he has Connor Williams as his top-ranked offensive tackle. So I gave Jets Minkah Fitzpatrick at 8, and that's only because all the quarterbacks were off the board. And yes, I also have Sam Darnold as my number 1 pick to the Jets in my 2019 mock draft. So I'm intentionally doing this because I know there's these Jets fans that like to wear these Sam Darnold jerseys to Jets games and piss everyone else off. So I'm allowing the Jets fans to troll us with Sam Darnold jerseys for another year, assuming he goes back to school.
Well, Minkah Fitzpatrick is a good pick because it's within his range. I think Fitzpatrick's range right now is around 7 or 8 up through around 20. And I think that's going to shrink down as the process continues. I think right now his range is just kind of up there. I've heard a few different opinions about him. So, I mean, we're going to see what his range is, what it keeps switching to, and hopefully here in the next few weeks to a month, we'll have a better idea about what we're looking at with Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
And at number 9, I gave Green Bay Anthony
Miller. The Jets
Miller.
have most of the pieces in the secondary with Claiborne and 2 rookie safeties. Minkah's a better version of Screen. That's why I figure he'd be a good fit because Buster Screen got penalized too much versus Miami, and he's just terrible in coverage.
Yeah, and at number 9, I gave Green Bay Anthony Miller, wide receiver, Memphis. Miller's just a beast. Let's just put it that way. Got great hands, good route runner. He just he's just a beast of a player, and Green Bay would be thrilled to have him.
Yeah, they would. I don't think they're going to be picking that high, though, but you're right. I
Yeah,
still think
and
they can win 9 games. As crazy as it sounds, I think the Packers can win 9 games. I don't think they're a playoff team, but I think they can win 9 games. And if they get Aaron Rodgers back, I'm hearing Rodgers is actually ahead of schedule. He might return in week 15 or week 16.
yeah, I heard that as well. I heard today that he was taking snaps from trainers. So, which is he just, from what I understand, he had a couple of screws put in his shoulder, and he's already taken snaps from trainers. I mean, that's, say what you will, that's pretty tough.
It is. That's a
Yeah.
lot of toughness here.
Yeah.
I gave the Browns at number 9, Derwin James. I don't project trades in my mock drafts, and I really believe Texas corner Holton Hill is better than any receiver in this draft, but Holton Hill's been suspended for the rest of the 2017 college football season, so the Browns aren't taking him at number 9. So they go with Derwin James, and they pair him up with Peppers to form something special. But I think in real life, Cleveland would probably trade this pick. But since I don't project trades in mock drafts, we're just going to give the Browns Derwin James, even though I do believe they would trade this pick.
Yeah, and I don't blame you for that because James is definitely a good player, but when it comes to trading picks, as we know, Cleveland is not shy, and so we're gonna always be at the edge of our seat whenever Cleveland picks, just for the simple fact we need to be ready for anything. And at going on to number 10, I gave Arizona Bradley Chubb, rush from NC State, North Carolina State. And Chubb is probably going to be the highest riser of anybody. He started out the beginning of the year as a second-day selection. He is flying up draft boards. His improvement is nothing short of miraculous. And
well, I had Bradley Chubb as a first rounder throughout the entire draft process. There was a point where I had Bradley Chubb going to Tampa Bay in the late first round, and now I have them taking him at number 10. So I still have Chubb to Tampa, and this is the guy that Tony Mario's been wanting the Buccaneers to draft, regardless. And he might get his wish. I mean, Tampa Bay, they need a 43 defensive end in the worst way possible. They have 14 sacks, which is 30th in the league. But the thing to reflect on here is that 6 of those 14 sacks came against the Jets. The freaking Jets, who need offensive tackle upgrades at both spots. So I'm not counting those 6 sacks. I'm giving Tampa Bay a mulligan for that game. Even though they got 6 sacks, I'm still giving their defensive line a mulligan because they played a terrible offensive line. So I'm not counting that 6-sack performance. And they get Bradley Chubb here. The thing is, Noah Spence is on injured reserve. And without Noah Spence, they got no pass rushers, literally. So you get Bradley Chubb, you get Noah Spence back at full health. This pass rush is ready to go. It will be one of the best in the league. And he now has 21.5 tackles for a loss, 10 sacks, and 10 quarterback hurries this year. He's already exceeded his stats from 2016. So, yeah, he's a senior. So he's going to go in the top 10. I think you can make an argument for taking him in the top 5. But he'll go in the top 10 because he's 4-3 player rather than a 43-34 player. But he's great in coverage. Like, I watched his huddle tape from high school football, and he actually pressed a receiver. He lined up as a defensive end, but he shifted over to corner because he saw no one covering a receiver, and he pressed the receiver
as a cornerback. So maybe he can play off the edge. I don't know if he's a pure edge guy or if he's a 43 only guy, but most of the time he places his hand in the dirt. Even when he was 220 in high school, he placed his hand in the dirt. But he had the body of a linebacker back then. He now has the body of a defensive end. So it's really tough for me to get a read on whether he's a pure edge guy or whether he's a 43 only guy. Marcus Golden is on IR for the Cardinals, and they with him on IR, they do need someone next to Chandler Jones, even though Golden was great in his second year. So I can respect that Arizona pick. We both have Bradley Chubb at 10. The guy's 6'4", 275. He was 220 coming out of high school, and he already is up to 275 6 years later. So that's really impressive. So yeah,
and
we'll move on.
don't a sleeper team for Chubb would probably be the Giants, so don't rule that out either, no matter where the Giants
agree,
pick.
Joey. I think that actually is a sleeper team because Olivier Vernon and Jason Pierre-Paul got extended, but the Giants can cut Olivier Vernon and save cap space. So just saying. He only has 2 sacks this year. Don't be surprised if they cut Vernon.
Yeah, and so moving on to number 11, I've got Cincinnati at this spot, and they're taking Derwin James for Florida State safety.
We're not on to Cincinnati yet in my mock draft, but I'll read their pick at 12 and Miami's pick at number 11. With Miami, I sort of swung for the fences here. I went with Bo Ben-Schwale, the Wisconsin right guard, 6'6", 317, excellent tape. Reminds me a lot of Ryan Ramczyk. I think he's actually better than Ramczyk. Played tight end and defensive end in high school. He played right tackle at Wisconsin before converting to right guard, where he has dominated the last 2 years. And this is Wisconsin's best right guard since Kevin Zeitler. And Miami's in the market for multiple starting guards. So if Quentin Nelson's off the board, I think Ben-Schwale becomes the pick here for Miami. I also think that could be the case with the Colts. So I think both of these guards are going to be drafted relatively highly. And Ben-Schwale gets a tough Michigan Wolverines opponent that has Maurice Hurst, who a lot of people in the draft community are talking about, and they've got Rashawn Gary, a first-round defensive lineman in 2019. So this Wisconsin-Michigan game could be huge for Ben-Schwale's stock this weekend and could even propel him perhaps even into the top 10 if Miami ends up with a top 10 pick. I think it's possible that we see 2 guards go in the top 10 like 2013 when we had Chance Warmack and Jonathan Cooper both go in the top 10. I honestly think we could see that again this year. It's not as crazy as it sounds. So I went with Ben-Schwale at 11, and then with the Bengals, I gave them Okorafor at number 12 with because I just think Derwin James has separated himself from Ronnie Harrison. So why I went with Okorafor out of Western Michigan at number 12.
Well, at number 12, I've got the Cleveland pick from Houston, and I gave Cleveland Minkah Fitzpatrick, cornerback from Alabama. The last week, you could say that one guy cost the Browns a win, and that's a guy who gave up 2 touchdown passes in coverage, and that was the Browns' number 2 corner, and he did not play at a level that you would expect from.
I've always felt like Jamar Taylor sucked, but I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, because last year he was very solid, and he earned another shot this year to be an NFL starting cornerback because he was so solid last year.
But they moved him over to the boundary this year, and he sucks in the boundary. He's great in the nickel, but he sucks in the boundary.
Yeah, and he was the one who cost the Browns that game because there were 2 passes where he just lost the receiver, and all the quarterback had to do was make a good throw. Quarterback made a good throw, and it just, he was.
Minkah can play corner and safety, though. That's the thing. He can
Yeah,
play
and
both corner and safety, so the Browns can use him in a variety of ways.
yeah, so you could argue that if the Browns had Fitzpatrick this year, they would already have one win, potentially two, simply because they wouldn't have given up those touchdown passes.
If the Browns had kept Hayden, they'd have at least 3 wins by now.
I doubt that because Hayden would probably end up finding a way to
Hayden,
injure himself.
Hayden would have gotten injured, but I still think they would have had 1 or 2 wins. I don't think they'd be winless if they had Hayden. They'd still be in a pretty terrible position.
Yeah, they might have 1 win, maybe 2 at this point, simply because Taylor wouldn't have been there to screw things up. And
all right, number 13, I'm going to go with the Denver Broncos here, and I'm not giving them a quarterback. I'm not giving them an offensive tackle. I'm not giving them a defensive lineman. I'm not giving them an outside linebacker. We're going to go Texas Longhorns cornerback Holton Hill, the same Holton Hill who got dismissed from Texas. See, Bradley Roby was a top 15 pick, but he fell to 30 because there were some character concerns with him coming out of Ohio State. Same thing with Shane Ray. Denver wants players that keep their nose clean. They'll look past a player's character concerns if they can keep their nose clean in the NFL. And that's what's happened with Roby. That's what's happened with Ray. They've taken chances on project players like this, and they've usually gotten the better end of the deal in these situations. And this is the thing. Aqib Talib, if you cut him in 2019, you only save $8 million. If you cut him this offseason, you save $11 million. And Aqib Talib has been terrible versus both the Eagles and the Patriots the last 2 games. His coverage has been terrible. I mean, Carson Wentz burned him in coverage on the first touchdown he threw last week. Brady was able to pick apart Talib. So, yeah, and Brady would throw it towards the linebackers or towards the safeties. He'd get people to bite. But my point is, he may not have thrown it to Talib, but he was able to make Talib miss on some plays just like Wentz. So Aqib Talib is probably going to be gone because with that $11 million you save, you can spend that on a quarterback in free agency. Maybe somebody like Tyrod Taylor, who the Bills just benched. So who the Broncos also tried to – there were reports about the Broncos trying to trade for them. Maybe they won't spend that money in a quarterback, and they'll put faith in Paxton Lynch. That's why Denver's going to be one of the most interesting teams to watch in the offseason. Are they going to go with Lynch, free agent, draft a QB? They're going to be an interesting team to follow in the offseason because of that. And I'm going to go out on a limb and give them Holton Hill to replace Aqib Talib because Holton Hill limited James Washington in check, and he kept Al Lazard in check. He kept both of those Big 12 receivers who have NFL talent in check. And he reminds me of Trumaine Johnson, the Rams corner, as well as Marcus Peters, because Trumaine Johnson's about 6'3", 200 pounds. And he reminds me from Marcus Peters from a coverage standpoint, from an off-the-field standpoint.
Well, at 13, I gave Tampa Bay Bryce Love, running back out of Stanford, because let's face it, everybody knows, like, I'll give the midget hamster or whatever that nickname of his is the benefit of the doubt. He has every time I've written him off for the last 3 years, he's come back and had strong performances, but
the Buccaneers can cut him at any point without losing cap money. That's how Doug Martin's contract works. Plus, Charles Sims has just been terrible, and his rookie deal's about to expire too. So, yeah. I mean,
and Bryce Love is like a younger Martin in a lot of ways in the way he plays. So, I mean, you get rid of an older Martin to get a guy who's probably a more explosive version of what Martin used to be. And I don't think Tampa Bay can go wrong with that.
At the same time, I think the offensive line and defensive line in the trenches are both 2 big liabilities for Tampa Bay. And if you went with Bryce Love and he didn't pan out because you didn't fix the offensive line, then that would look like a bad pick on paper. But at the same time, it is a good pick for Tampa. I'm just not sure it would work out until they fix the offensive line and the defensive line. But it is a good pick if they do decide to release Doug Martin. Again, the X factor here is Doug Martin, but Joey decides to swing for the fences with Bryce Love, which was a good
so
pick.
far I've swung for the fences the last 3 years at running back for Tampa Bay and struck out on all three, so I'm bound to be due at some point.
You're like the Cleveland Indians versus the Yankees when it comes to Tampa Bay swinging for running backs. Moving on to my number 14 pick for the Buffalo Bills, Christian Wilkins. The Bills traded Marcel Darius. Kyle Williams is also set to be a free agent at defensive tackle at the end of the season, so Buffalo is going to need 2 defensive tackles. And the 2 best 3-down defensive tackles in this draft are Wilkins out of Clemson and Daron Payne out of Alabama. So we're going to give the Bills Wilkins here at 14 and help them shore up that front side of the defensive line. I mean, I don't think the Bills are going to give up on Peterman. And the reason someone told me today in Lombardi's Draft Talk is the reason the Bills benched Tyrod Taylor is because he did not want to make those deep throws where you fire it into tight coverage like
he didn't want to take the chances on it getting intercepted.
Peterman did.
Protecting his stock, but sometimes you need to take those chances. And Peterman is a guy who will probably look at it and be like, okay, I got to take the shot.
The correct choice of words is tight windows. He didn't want to throw the ball into tight windows. Peterman wants to throw into tight windows. That's why the Bills benched.
Quarterback, sometimes you have to throw into tight windows. It's your job. At number 14, I gave the Raiders Rashaan Evans, inside linebacker, Alabama.
Who I also have at number 21, which we'll get to. I think the Raiders can come back and get the wild card. A lot of it stems on them beating the Patriots this weekend, which I actually have the Raiders doing. But I gave the Ravens Bryce Love. And
nice pick.
Yeah.
And thankfully, we saved time because we just went over Bryce Love.
Who do you have at 15?
15. I've got Baltimore, and I gave them Christian Kirk, wide receiver, Texas Tech, because Joe Flacco needs that big play guy. They need that downfield receiver. And Kirk is probably, as far as a playmaker receiver goes, he's probably the best pure playmaker at receiver, and that's what Baltimore needs right now because their offense is falling apart. They don't have any playmakers, and Flacco is just falling apart because of it.
I like the pick. He was my preseason wide receiver 1, and I think he'll be great in the NFL. Even though he's had a down year, I think his ability on tape from 2016, that translates very well to the NFL. I'm not sure he'll be the first receiver pick, but if anybody takes Christian Kirk in the first round, I'll probably give them an A+ grade because I loved his tape heading into the year. I don't think he's had the opportunities you'd want a receiver to have.
And that's the same thing I said about Zach Banner last year. It's like when you're considered the number 1 player at your position, and then you're not, there are usually circumstances behind that.
Into the preseason in 2016.
It's like that talent is there somewhere. So it's not like you lose that talent. It's just being covered up by one thing or another. It's like with Kirk, it's probably the fact that he's playing with a backup quarterback, and that quarterback's not doing so well. With Banner, it's because Banner became a fat ass and couldn't keep himself away from the pizza.
I mean, Trevor Knight actually was decent last year in terms of getting the ball to Kirk. This guy's a freshman. He doesn't know what he's doing. And
exactly.
We can criticize Trevor Knight for leaving Oklahoma. We can criticize him for putting Katy Perry in the friend zone. We can criticize Trevor Knight for his crappy combine. Trevor Knight got the ball to Kirk. This other guy they have hasn't.
Yeah, we can definitely criticize him for putting Katy Perry in the friend zone. That is something we can criticize him about all day long. And that's something that,
because Katy Perry confessed her love to Trevor Knight on College Game Day, and he never he wasn't interested.
I am so disappointed in him right now. He is not an alpha quarterback. If he ever wanted to be anything in the NFL, he just blew his chance right there. You do not turn down Katy Perry. It's so disappointed. Just killed my mood. Let's move on to 16.
All right, the Lions. They got Daron Payne out of Alabama. Haloti Ngata's in a contract year. Let's reunite Ashawn Robinson with another Alabama defensive tackle, Daron Payne. They're both 3-down defensive tackles, and they're both from Alabama.
Absolutely. 16, I gave Denver the son of Zeus, Orlando Brown.
Orlando Zeus Brown is a right tackle next to Bowles?
Yeah, it's like, give him Brown because he's the son of Zeus. That means Orlando Brown's going to end up being Hercules. So,
I like that.
Yeah, so Orlando Hercules Brown, the son of Zeus.
Yes, and the Broncos are Pegasus. So if Orlando Brown is Hercules and the Broncos logo is Pegasus, then the Raiders are Hades. Or the Chargers are Hades.
Dude, you know nothing about mythology, do you?
I don't care. Let's move
on. Because you're sitting there like, want the son of a god to serve a titan when the gods overthrew the titans to start the rule. I mean, this is not working. I'm sorry. I mean,
all right. I've got Washington at number 17. I went Ronnie Harrison. They need a free safety. This is the thing. The reason I have Ronnie Harrison a lot lower than you do is because I messaged Charlie Campbell about whether Lamar Jackson or Ronnie Harrison would be a better pick for the Chargers, and he agreed with me on Lamar. And I figured, well, Ronnie Harrison, I went back, I rewatched the tape, I realized he's actually pretty suspect in coverage from the Arkansas tape. Like, he'll fatigue at times or he'll turn the wrong way. So I moved him down to 17. He still has first-round talent. He still has awesome tape. But I moved him down to 17 for that reason. So I have Ronnie Harrison at 17. You're up at 17, and then I'll get to my surprise pick, a player you don't even have in your mock draft for the Packers at number 18.
Well, you've been looking at my mock draft early, haven't you? It's like, I am so disappointed. It should have been a surprise. Number 17, Buffalo. I gave them Jare Alexander, cornerback, Louisville, my top corner. Well, one of my top 3 corners at this point because
Alexander's missed 6 games with injuries, and he still doesn't have any deflections or interceptions yet. They haven't thrown the ball his way. I don't know if that's due to his presence in coverage. He had a brilliant 2016 season, has awesome tape, but
yeah, his coverage abilities are awesome. I think he's one of those guys that I think a couple years ago there was a guy, one of the best corners in the nation, who only had 4 deflections on the year or something like that, simply because they wouldn't throw his way. I forget who it was. And I think Jare Alexander is a similar type guy to that. I just don't think he's as athletic.
He had like 18 deflections at North Carolina State his sophomore year, but then he only had like 4 his junior year. Then Washington drafted him. They let him walk, and the Raiders got him. So
yeah, and
Washington's mistake was not being patient with David Amerson.
Yeah, and yet have to be patient with young guys. That's the big thing.
All right, now it's time for my surprise corner for the Green Bay Packers at number 18. Yep, Josh Jackson, cornerback, Iowa. Put this guy on your radar right now, Joey. This guy had 2 interceptions on Josh Allen in the opener. I figured, it was a fluke. But he had another interception against Ohio State. He had 2 pick sixes in the 49-14 loss to Wisconsin. So basically, he was the only player for Iowa to score in the 49-14 loss to Wisconsin. He is 6'1", 192 pounds, 16 deflections, 7 interceptions. He's on pace to make Desmond King look like a prince. So
yeah, it's Josh Jackson is a guy who is on my radar right now. I've got him as an early day 2 that could sneak into day 1. So I'm keeping a close eye on him to see what exactly he does going out. And hopefully to see what he does on the big stage during their bowl game.
Yeah, I mean,
because everybody knows that they're going to have a bowl game simply because everybody and their dead grandmother gets a bowl game.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Jackson has a remarkable tape. I mean, I honestly think he's in a position where he could potentially jump Holton Hill because Holton Hill has those character concerns potentially with him being suspended for the rest of 2017. Jackson doesn't have that. He's been clean. I honestly think Jackson could jump from 18, where I have him to the Packers, to as high as maybe 14, where we have Denver picking. I mean, he's making Desmond King look like a prince. Let's move on to who's your number 18 player.
My number 18, Detroit Lions take Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle out of Clemson. Detroit, every time they get a good defensive tackle, they lose them. So,
yeah, and they don't even bother re-signing him. It happened with Fairley. It happened with Sue. It's about to happen with Haloti Ngata.
Well, with Fairley, it's a little bit – I think with Fairley is a little bit different. Well, he went to Buffalo, I believe, but ended up with the heart ailment.
You're thinking of Marcel Darius. Darius went to Buffalo. Fairley got drafted by the Lions to pair with Sue.
Yeah, but didn't Fairley end up having the heart ailment?
Yeah, but they let him walk in the Saints. The Saints had to do that.
Saints. Okay, I knew he went somewhere. But yeah, it's Wilkins, very talented, good first step, gets some good push. Yeah, Detroit they need to figure out a way to keep these darn defensive tackles. What they need to do, they get a talented one, then they let them go.
Yeah, this is how the Detroit Lions front office works. Let's re-sign Calvin Johnson. Let's re-sign Matthew Stafford. We got Stafford. We got Megatron. F everyone else. And then Bob Quinn comes in, and now they're adding this youth movement. But his biggest challenge is going to be maintaining some of these players outside of Stafford. Ziggy Ansah's set to be a free agent. If you lose him, you might need multiple defensive ends if Anthony Zettel doesn't step up. You've also got Tariq Whitehead, who is also going to be Jordan Whitehead. Not Jordan Whitehead's on Pittsburgh, but Whitehead is one of Detroit's better outside linebackers. And if you don't get him back, because he was the middle linebacker last year, but then you drafted Gerard Davis and moved him to the weak side. So if Detroit does not maintain that weak side linebacker, that could be an option as well. Maybe somebody like Jerome Baker. But moving on, number 19, the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to go sophomore redshirt Clelin Ferrell out of Clemson. He's already bested his...
Yeah, very nice pick. And
he might go back to school. If he does, then Harold Landry or somebody else is going to move up to this pick. I do have all the bio photos for the defensive end rankings, which I'll start this weekend, but I don't think the defensive end, the 43 defensive end class, is as deep as last year was. I do think there's some quality talent in the first round, a few good players, but nothing along the lines of where you can stack this class up to last year's class, where you just had natural edge rushers at both 43 and 34 all across the board in the first 3 rounds. You don't have that this year.
Yeah, and I agree. And I also have Dallas at 19, and I went same basic thinking going along the defensive line and the pass rush and so on and so forth. Different player, but I gave them front 7 help. We go back to Alabama, defensive tackle Deron Payne, because even though they've got some quality defensive tackles, I think that they would benefit greatly from a better rotational front 7, because they get injured up there. They don't have the rotation going, and a lot of great defensive teams have a great front 7 rotation, and I think Dallas needs a better rotation with guys who can go in, go out with no loss of production.
Yeah, I didn't have Payne as a first rounder at the beginning of the year, but there were a lot of people at Draft Utopia that liked Deron Payne. I mean, Josiah Ray pointed out how he's going to be one of the workout warriors that surges up the boards at the combine. And Drake Holiday from Lombardi's Draft Talk said that he's a 3-down player. Deshaun Hand is a 2-down player. So if that's the case from the tape, then Payne's going to go in the first round because 3 down defensive tackles have a lot more value than 2 down defensive tackles. And a lot of the guys we like, Dalen Mack, Derek Nottie out of Florida State, Trent Thompson, they are showing 2 down ability on tape, not 3 down ability. Payne is separating himself from those players, so he gets picked in the first round.
Exactly. Number 20.
I have Atlanta, the team that just beat Dallas, picking here. I went Vita Vea. Now, Vita Vea is 6'5", 340. He has 3 down ability, but he's very sluggish. He belongs in the back half of the first round or the early second round. He's not in the same ballpark as somebody like Wilkins or Payne. But I think we're going to see him get pushed up with those guys because he's the only other 3 down player, even though he's a lot slower off the edge. Someone's going to panic. Someone's going to say, well, there's only 3 first-round defensive tackles, and there's a few teams in the first round like Detroit. I thought Detroit would be the only team in the market for a DT, but Atlanta loses Poe to free agency, and Buffalo traded both of their defensive tackles. So it's now those 3 teams as well as potentially Minnesota if they lose Sherman Floyd.
And I have heard rumors that Atlanta is desperately trying to re-sign Poe. We don't know exactly at the moment how far that's getting or what progress is being made, but I heard the other day that they are desperately trying to make that happen.
And if they do, I will change this pick. I just don't know because it's like guard, safety, and defensive tackle are their only needs. There's not going to be – Harrison or James is not going to be available when Atlanta picks. We got to be realistic. And if Vita Vea isn't there, who the hell are the Falcons going to take? I mean, that's the most tedious part in this mock draft. That and where the Vikings are going to go if they make the playoffs. Those are the 2 most frustrating things for me when having to make a mock draft.
Well, I will cover that when Atlanta picks for me at 21. But at number 20, I'm going to go Jacksonville Jaguars taking quarterback, my number 1 quarterback in this draft, Baker Mayfield out of Oklahoma.
Awesome. So Baker Mayfield goes to the Jaguars.
Yeah, and I think that would be an excellent fit for him. He is put him in a situation where he has a passionate coach, a passionate team president, and despite what everybody says, after living in Jacksonville for almost 2 years, they have a great owner. You know, living here, you actually see a completely different side of what Shad Khan does. And let's not sugarcoat it. I've seen his yacht up close and personal, and he has a bloody speedboat inside the yacht. Okay.
It's a yacht inside the yacht. Yacht inception.
No, I mean, it has a yacht, then it has a expensive freaking speedboat in there. I mean, it is an awesome yacht. But Baker Mayfield going there, and I'm sure he will have far less of a party lifestyle than the current incarnation of their quarterback, who may end up this weekend being the Cleveland Browns' best player. Who do you have at 20?
I gave the Falcons Vita Vea at 20, and at 21,
you already went over
Rashawn Evans, same player you did. So you can break down Atlanta's pick at 21 to save us some time, since we both have Evans and Raiders.
You already broke down this pick.
Yeah,
I will tell you why I gave him to Atlanta, and that is Clelin Ferrell, rush for Clemson. And Atlanta has one great pass rusher. Atlanta needs a second great pass rusher because I'm of the belief that Atlanta has a lot of potential at cornerback and safety. A lot of young guys, but they aren't there yet. And the best help you can give a cornerback, safety, defensive backfield is a pass rush. You give them two great off-the-edge rushers.
Vic Beasley and Takaris McKinley. And I think they're going to stick with that tandem, that duo. And Adrian Claiborne had 6 sacks versus Dallas as well. They've got another edge player next to him for depth too. So they've got starters and depth on the defensive end spot.
I've never really been a huge fan of McKinley. So for me, the jury's still out on him. He needs to show more because where a lot of people gave him the benefit of the doubt coming out of the draft, I didn't. So that's the big thing.
He only has 2 sacks in his rookie year so far. And one of those sacks is the meager Jets.
Yeah. So, yeah, you guys are saying you think they stay with McKinley. I'm saying I didn't give McKinley the benefit of the doubt coming out of the draft.
The other came against the Lions where they had Greg Robinson filling in for Taylor Decker at left tackle. So his 2 sacks came against Ben Ijalana and Taylor Decker. Or no, Greg Robinson and Ben Ijalana. So Greg Robinson and Ben Ijalana, those are the 2 sacks those are the 2 tackles McKinley got sacks against. That's not impressive.
Yeah, I'm completely overwhelmed by the amount of quality in the people.
Tunsil kept him in check. The Packers' backup left tackle, not David Bakhtiari, but the backup left tackle for Green Bay kept him in check. Leno kept him in check. That is not good.
No.
I mean, he didn't even get a sack against the Cowboys last week, and Tyron Smith was injured. That is very...
what's your 21?
That's very underwhelming so far.
It is.
You can still turn the corner, but it's not an impressive start so far.
It's not.
22, I finally have a receiver coming off the board. James Washington out of Oklahoma State. He goes to Carolina. I thought Devin Funchess was a number 2 target at best. He showed me he could be a number 1 player on Monday night because he caused my team to blow a 40-point fantasy lead like the Falcons. So, yeah. I would go out on a limb and say James Washington at 21 makes a lot of sense for Carolina at this pick. So I'll go with that. James Washington, they get him to pair with Funchess. And they have Funchess and Washington as their top 2 guys at receiver.
I like the pick. Number 22, I've got the New Orleans Saints, and I go with Anthony Johnson, wide receiver out of Buffalo.
That's a good pick. I think Willie Snead might be in a contract year. I'm going to double-check that really quickly because I had the Saints getting Anthony Miller last week, hoping to make him the Brandon Cooks of that offense. Because Snead got that suspension at the beginning of the year, and he's only 5'11", and okay, so Willie Snead is an RFA. He's only 5'11", but he's a restricted free agent, meaning that he will be an unrestricted free agent in 2019. So they're going to need a number 2 next to Michael Thomas, and I'm just not sure that Willie Snead's that guy. He was a great slot receiver next to Brandon Cooks when they had him. He's a great depth player, but I'm not sure that he is he's a player that can be a number 2 guy. And even if he has a breakout year, his agent is Drew Rosenhaus. So you're going to have to go through the Sean Hannity, Drew Rosenhaus negotiations where he rants like Sean Hannity until his players get paid. You don't want to do that. So, yeah, that's a good pick.
Yeah, and what's your number 22?
That was your number 22 pick. I've been reading my picks before you. That's why.
Yeah, that's why I'm backward and confused.
Okay, so do you want to read 23? Because I have Jacksonville at 23. I gave them Anthony Miller. So you can, and I have the Rams at 24. So I'm guessing you have the Rams at 23. Why don't you read your 23rd pick? And if
I've got the Seattle Seahawks at 23, and I've got them taking Colorado cornerback Isaiah Oliver. One of the best cover corners in the draft. I love Oliver. So
Oliver got carded by Darnold on Saturday, and I love Josh Jackson's tape. That's why I moved Josh Jackson ahead of Oliver. but I have 4 corners in my top 24 now. I have Anthony Miller to the Jaguars with Bortles. So
Yeah, and we already went over Miller, and
yeah, we did. Well, that's why I'm not saying anything
yeah,
else about him. But
but a
that's
very, very good pick. I love the pick.
I mean, you get Miller to replace Allen Robinson. That's a steal of the draft, and all over the Rams because Trumaine Johnson's going to be a free agent. So that's why you got to get his replacement, and you get that with Oliver.
Yeah, number 24. I've got Minnesota, giving them a cornerback, TCU, Ranthony Texada. He is a guy, love his ball skills. So
yeah, the thing with Texada is he's only 5'11", but he held a 6'4" Cortland Sutton receiver to 0 receiving yards. Even though he got burned by guys like Washington and stuff, the fact that he was able to hold Sutton to that little receiving yards is beyond impressive for me.
Well, not only that, but I'm looking at Minnesota. They only have one cornerback with 2 interceptions or more, and they're only +1 on the turnover ratio. So to get a guy who can create turnovers like Texada does would be huge for them at number 24.
I have Minnesota at 25, and this was the most frustrating pick for me in my mock draft because I wasn't sure. There's no left guards on the board. There's no defensive tackles on the board. This was such a frustrating pick for me. I did end up giving Minnesota a defensive tackle. I went with Maurice Hurst, the senior out of Michigan, with 12.5 tackles for a loss, 4 sacks. I don't like his tape as much as some of these other prospects. He's only 6'2", 280. He needs to get a little bit stronger. But everybody else in the draft community loves Hurst. Loves him to the point where I might get booted from Lombardi's draft talk if I don't put him in the first round. So I gave Maurice Hurst to the Vikings because he's a little bit undersized, just like Sharif Floyd was. And I figured that's a good replacement for Floyd at this point. And picking at 25 would be the absolute worst case scenario for the Vikings. But maybe they would get a corner because Captain Munnerlyn's just not on the Panthers now. So they don't have that depth at corner they used to. Terrence Newman can't be the number 2 corner on this team forever. And Traw Waynes has been a liability compared to Xavier Rhodes, who I remember after that 2015 draft, we were talking about how Waynes and Rhodes were going to be a shutdown tandem for years to come because Waynes was considered the number 1 corner in that 2015 draft. But Traw Waynes has been a massive disappointment. I mean, we looked past the flaws the first 2 years, but this is year 3. It's like you got to step up and work for your supper at some point, kid. So
yep, absolutely. At number 25, I gave the Los Angeles Rams a guy who I think could be one of the steals at offensive tackle in this draft, Brian O'Neill out of Pittsburgh, offensive tackle.
Great pick. He could be a steal, and they do like Pittsburgh players. See Aaron Donald. I also saw Jeff Fisher interviewing TJ Clemens at the Panera I worked at. So, yeah.
I remember you saying that.
They love Pittsburghers. What can I say?
Yeah, they do. Number 26, I gave Tennessee James Washington, wide receiver out of Oklahoma State. Tennessee needs some more big play wide receivers, some big play offensive players, and James Washington is a big-time athlete at wide receiver.
Really? So, I think the Titans are actually going to beat the Steelers tonight because of their big play weapons. Pittsburgh's banged up in the secondary. They've got Delaney Walker, Corey Davis, Eric Decker, Rashard Matthews, all at full health for the 3rd game in a row and are on a 4-game winning streak.
Well, let's put it this way. The Browns outplayed them for a good while when the Browns weren't necessarily playing that well. So that, and the Browns have trouble with big play receivers. So that
with those
really
guys. Corey Davis came back the next week after that game. So did Delaney Walker. So the Browns didn't have to deal with those 2 players.
Yeah, but that makes me queasy. those guys come in and
They
what
will.
they do the
They're
rest of the
coming in
year,
tonight
because
against Pittsburgh. They're going to surprise you.
when Taylor has a good game, the guy who basically lost you the game has a good game against you. That look at it from that perspective and say that doesn't make you question a couple things.
Yeah, and that was your number 26 pick. My number 26 pick is Ohio State cornerback Denzel Ward. Yeah, another freaking
Nice
corner.
pick.
Yeah, I know he's only 5'10", but he had 5 deflections in one game versus Indiana and Ohio State's opener. A lot of people have him a lot higher, but he's only 5'10". So when you compare him to the 6'1" corners in this draft, like Oliver and Jackson and Holton Hill and some of the other bigger corners, he's at a disadvantage. He has first-round talent, but at the same time, he's inconsistent. He's only 5'10", and he's going to go in the late first round. I had a day 2 grade on him initially, but I had to push someone up because I think Buffalo needs a corner next to Tre'Davious White with all the corners they let walk in the offseason, whether it be Kevon Seymour, Darby, or letting Gilmore sign with the Patriots. They need another corner next to White, even though Tre'Davious White has been a bigger asset to that secondary than Captain America has been to the Marvel Universe.
Yes. Number 27, I gave Washington Darius Geis, running back, LSU. Washington's been looking for the answer at running back, and Geis has been coming on the last couple weeks. He got off to a snail's pace this year for some reason, but he's finally starting to show some of what he did last year.
Yeah, but they've got a ton of depth at running back, though. They've got Robert.
They have a ton of depth, but where's the impact?
Robert Kelly, they've got Chris Thompson. They drafted Perrine in the 4th round, and Perrine was ahead of Mixon on the depth chart for his first 2 years at Oklahoma.
Yeah, but where's the impact? Because that's what I'm not seeing from Washington.
Thompson had like 2 receiving touchdowns against the Raiders. Like, these running backs, you don't know. These running backs are like jumping beans. You don't know which one's going to come up on the blip as an impact player in fantasy, and none of them are ever consistent.
Yeah,
that's what irritates you. That's what makes you want to pull your hair out, because it's like you got all these good running backs, you've got all this good depth, but one game, one running back takes off, then they revert to crap the next game, and then another running back takes off, and that really frustrates.
For stability at that position, and it's kind of like right now in Washington, it's kind of like throwing darts at a dartboard. It's like, you don't know what you're gonna get. You hope you're going to get them, and you're not a professional dart player, so you hope you're going to hit a good one, but you're not sure. So we're going to throw
that plays in the state of Washington a running back, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. The Washington Redskins do not play in the state of Washington. They play in Washington, D.C., which is Virginia, technically. So they're technically That's a history lesson for you kids. I don't know why my computer kept typing 8s in the chat room, but I guess we both have Geis in Washington. I have him in Seattle, Washington. You have him in the Washington Redskins, in the nation's capital. So we both have Geis in Washington, just different locations.
Yeah, just different Washingtons. Okay. Did you put in your 27?
Yeah, that was my 27. We both have Geis in 27. Different Washingtons.
28, I got Pittsburgh. I gave them Calvin Ridley, wide receiver, going back to Alabama. With
this selection, Joseph Potter's going to represent the people of Pittsburgh. I'll represent the people of Tennessee, and they're playing tonight. So I'm going to go with Ogbonnia Okoronkwo, the edge player out of Oklahoma. And this guy is 6'1", 241 pounds, 16 tackles for a loss, 8 sacks. I feel like the Titans have the luxury to take the best player on the board and ignore need. Plus, Arakpo and Derek Morgan are both in contract years next season. So if you draft a pass rusher now and let them learn behind Arakpo and Morgan, and both pass rushers want too much money, you could start Ogbonnia Okoronkwo and then Kevin Dodd, your 2016 second-round pick, who has 2 years of experience on the bench now, would have a third after next season. And you could start those guys and have a youth movement at the pass rusher position. So
yeah, and at number 29, I gave Carolina Cortland Sutton, wide receiver, SMU.
Cam Newton has been demanding a big target. So if they do take a big target, that's one of the candidates they could get. And Cortland Sutton, I do have some news on him. Even though I have a second-round grade on him, I do have some news on him. Cortland Sutton did receive a Senior Bowl invite this week. So if he goes to that game and dominates, guess what? Ryan Romero's prediction of him going as the top receiver in the draft doesn't look so crazy. It actually looks scientifically accurate. I mean, if Sutton goes to Mobile and dominates, he's back in that top 5, top 10 conversation where everyone had him in the preseason. And if he doesn't he possibly falls to day 2, perhaps even further. Because the same questions with why Watson didn't go to Mobile are going to show up with Sutton if he passes on this opportunity.
Yeah, where are you at 29?
Harold Landry to the Saints.
Nice pick.
Getting to the NFC title and losing.
Yeah, at number 30, I have Buffalo going with Harold Landry.
All right, at number 30 for me, this is going to be a draft pick you love so much that you're going to give the Pittsburgh Steelers an A+++ grade, and that's Orlando Brown. He fell to Pittsburgh at 30. They can just take the best player on the board. They've got 2 good starters at offensive tackle and Villanueva and Marcus Gilbert, but if one of them gets injured, Orlando Brown can just come in, take that spot. Sort of a luxury pick. Remember when the Packers had Chad Clifton and Mark Tauger still in their prime and they took Bulaga back in 2010? That's sort of what I see with Orlando Brown here and the value being so good. So they get a luxury pick here because all 22 of their starters are under contract next season.
Yeah, very good pick. At number 31, I gave your New England Patriots cornerback, Florida State, Tavares McFadden.
That's a player I mocked them last week.
Is it?
Oh. But yeah, that's a good pick for us. And then I ended the first round with 2 wide receivers. I had Philadelphia getting Anthony Johnson out of Buffalo at 31, which is such a huge steal. It's not even funny at that point. It's just highway robbery. Carson Wentz and the Eagles front office should be ashamed of themselves for their brilliant drafting. And I gave the Patriots Jake Wieneke at 32, the player you gave the Patriots in your very first mock draft. So that's my mock draft.
Yeah, at number 32, ending my mock draft with the Philadelphia Eagles, I gave them offensive tackle Clemson Mitch Hyatt.
Ooh, Mitch Hyatt got benched versus the Florida State game. Dabo Sweeney benched him, and the scouts have told Charlie Campbell that he's a day 3 pick. So, plus he got benched on tape last week against Florida State. Yeah, I moved him down to the 5th round.
Yeah, I'm going to keep tabs on that. I just think right now that Philadelphia could use it, say, hey, he's got a lot of raw athletic ability, and once Peters comes back, we can draft him, put him on the bench, coach him up, and then when Peters retires, slide him right in.
He has great foot speed, but he lacks the strength to start right now. He's someone you have to be patient with and develop. And if you're looking for someone...
Why do you think I gave him to Philadelphia? It's like they have their starters in place. I mean...
They could use another good receiver. I mean, Alshon Jeffrey's in a contract year. If he doesn't get extended, they're going to draft another wideout.
Oh, they're going to extend him. It's like, why are you going to trade for such a high-profile player to pair with your franchise quarterback if you have no plans in re-signing him?
Well, if they do extend him, then they will. Then the Eagles are going to be in a very tough position.
Yeah, because that's the reason I didn't give him a wide receiver.
I didn't give them I had them going with a running back for weeks, but then they traded for Jay Ajayi, and that put those plans on hold. Now and I'm going to wait on the offensive tackle. I probably shouldn't, but I am going to wait on that until 2019 because 2019 is also a strong offensive tackle class, which is why I feel the Eagles have the luxury to wait for an offensive tackle.
But yeah, it's like I gave it to them simply because they've got I gave them Wyatt yeah. I just got done with the professional wrestling website before coming on here. I gave him Hyatt because he's raw. Get him into an NFL weight room. They've got 2 starters for a couple years. Coach him up. He's got the footwork and the athletic ability
But he needs the muscle, and the best person that can mentor him on how to develop that muscle if I had to pick one offensive tackle in the NFL to mentor and develop someone on how to build muscle, it would probably be Jason Peters, and that's coming from a Patriots fan. So, yeah.
Yeah. And now that was our NFL mock drafts for this time period until we do a next one. So we're going to get on to tonight's game. Oh, nice day. Chris, what do you expect from tonight's game?
Well, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to lose this game. I just think the Titans are more prepared. Dick LeBeau is the defensive coordinator for the Titans now. He knows the Steelers roster better than the Steelers know the Titans roster. Mike Mularkey is also a former Steeler. In fact, his son was classmates with me in 7th grade. So, yeah, I know the history of the Mularkeys before Ben Roethlisberger. I know the history of the Mularkeys after Roethlisberger. I also know the history of LeBeau really well.
Yeah, and it's all full of malarkey, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
The
See how we're able to take these words and twist them into our own sick puns?
Oh, believe me, I drive people absolutely nuts at work doing that.
I drive you nuts on the podcast sometimes doing it as well.
Oh, I just go with it. It's so I've got to
yeah, I still
take
need
a
to
look.
get
Yeah, I'm kind of going through some things right now for the game tonight, and this is a situation I'm looking at. Le'Veon Bell has been a little bit of a disappointment this year, only averaging in the high 3s in carries or yards per carry. But at the same time, he's making plays when it counts. He's still catching the ball well out of the backfield, just like he always did. So, and Ben Roethlisberger hasn't had his typical year. He's only got 12 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. So, at the same time, Mariota isn't having a great year. He's got 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. But so you say Pittsburgh's going to lose. What's going to drive Tennessee to win? Because
I
these
think
guys
the front seven is going to make enough plays for them to actually win this game because they've got good inside linebackers. You saw how their linebackers, Williamson, their linebackers did an awesome job neutralizing Marlon Mack and Frank Gore. Now, I realize Le'Veon Bell is a completely different animal, a completely different situation. They also have Jarrell Casey, though. Ramon Foster's status is up in the air. He may not play tonight. The offense for Pittsburgh in the passing game, though, is dealing with a lot of injuries. I mean, Martavis Bryant and Vance McDonald are both injured. So you're going to have – I think the Titans are going to play well because Logan Ryan, the guy that Tennessee signed from the Patriots, he's gonna frustrate Antonio Brown tonight. And the key matchup in this game is going to be Adoree Jackson versus his former Trojan teammate, Juju Smith-Schuster. That's going to be the key matchup tonight. The two former Trojans. That's going to be the key matchup tonight. Because whoever wins that matchup is probably going to end up winning this game. And I think Pittsburgh's secondary without Hayden is banged up, and people are sleeping so hard on the Titans. I mean, OddsShark has Pittsburgh winning this game 31-10. Let's be real, Joey. This is not going to be a 31-10 routing where we see Pittsburgh win by 3 touchdowns. Pittsburgh might win this game, but it'll be by 7 to 10 points. It will not be a 31-10 ass blasting. That's not going to happen.
Well, I'm not a fan of either of these teams this year.
Both of these teams' quarterback play have regressed. I mean, both the quarterbacks have declined. Like, they did the biggest decline of quarterback play this year. They had Matt Ryan at 1, Mariota at 2, and Roethlisberger at 3. And they did a special about this on the NFL Network last night, which I was watching in my apartment on Total Access. And Heath Evans talked about how both quarterbacks have been underwhelming on NFL Total Access last night.
Yeah, and I am not a fan of either quarterback this year. I'm someone who I'm not sure how the Titans are 6-3 with how poor their offense has been overall.
DeMarco Murray
not-
really bailed them out this year.
Yeah, it's like I'm not a fan of the Steelers. I'm not sure how they're 7-2, considering how poor their offense has been all
the
year.
Entire game, and they still won.
Yeah, so
and that's the Colts. The Titans are going to put up a fight. The Colts they're not supposed to give up 17 points to the Colts. If you give up those type of plays, you're going to lose. But I think it's going to be a close game. I'm going to go 23-20 Titans pull the upset. Everyone else at Draft Utopia is taking the Steelers, though. And I don't have all of my predictions up. I still have 3 games I need to get up within the next 2 hours. But I am taking the Titans.
Yeah. Quite honestly, right now, I don't like either team, but I'll take the Titans in this game because I think Antonio Brown has bailed out the Steelers so much this year. Sooner or later, he's going to falter.
And this is the first time the Steelers have faced a team with 2 battle-tested offensive tackles. I know Watt and Dupree have been awesome this year, but Taylor Lewan and Jack Conklin are probably the 2 best offensive tackles the Pittsburgh Steelers will face all year. And that's coming from a Patriots fan. Because even though I love what Marcus Cannon and Nate Soldier are doing, I just think Jack Conklin and Lewan have more long-term ability. They have better footwork at the moment. They're maintaining blocks longer, and they're playing better. And their play is allowing Marcus Mariota, despite how inconsistent the rest of that offense is outside of DeMarco Murray, those 2 offensive tackles are doing just enough for Mariota to win, even with him only averaging 260 passing yards per game.
And
I don't think the Steelers coaching staff has prepared on how to stop these offensive tackles. They're talking about how they're going to blitz Mariota and force him out of the pocket. They know he can make big plays, but they haven't talked about how they're going to neutralize the offensive tackles. Do they have a plan in place? And is their plan as good as Dick LeBeau's plan to neutralize Pittsburgh's offensive line? I don't think it is. That's why I'm taking the Titans.
Yeah. So we are in agreement that we've got the Titans for tonight, and everybody can tune in Sunday and get our
top interior offensive lineman and the rest of the 13 predictions for Draft Utopia. We'll reveal those predictions on Sunday's show.
Yes, we'll get our full predictions for during Sunday's show on Draft Utopia live on TalkShoe.
And we're also going to break down the guards and the centers. So this is probably going to be one of our bigger shows of the year.
Yeah, and so, ladies and gentlemen, that is our show for the night. So, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment.
Tell your friends to retweet after you tweet the show.
Yes, please do, because any type of support that you lend us is
invaluable at this point.
Yes, don't you love how we're finishing each other's comments at this point? It's like those 2 freaky twins on the cartoons. I'm not even sure what cartoon it is.
We need to make a 2 for the Money sequel where the characters are based off of us.
Oh, God, that'd be scary.
Eisenberg from The Social Network could be me, and he'd be talking about this gambling firm and draft picks and stuff. I'm not sure what actor would play you. I know Zach Galifianakis could be Kerm. Yeah, Zach Galifianakis would be Kerm. I just don't know what actor you'd be played by. We'll go with Tommy Lee Jones.
Well, I think the actor that played K in the Men in Black 3, the younger one, I think that guy could probably do it. But Tommy Lee Jones is about 40 years too old for that one. But yeah, that would definitely be an interesting thing to run with. And so, as anybody else who has commented on the page knows, that give a comment, I'll get back to you, and hopefully you all like what you hear. And if not, you can still tell us that you think we freaking suck. So, and I will still thank you for it, my humble pie. Just make sure it's got some nice apple chunks in it, please. So, for Chris Ransom, I am Joseph Potter, and this has been the Evolution Network's episode of Draft Outlook, and we hope to see y'all again. So, have a good night and take care.